next item on the agenda is public request to speak. Anyone wishing to address the board on items on tonight's agenda may do so at this time. We do have one person who has questions regarding sole source, and I'm wondering, Mrs. Arnett, would you like to withhold your comment until the time in our meeting where we will be discussing it?
I defer to your judgment. If you feel that's what's best, so that my questions are fresh, or if you prefer to have time to think about it, I have like a couple of specific questions.
Sure, yeah, we can address them as part of the agenda.
Okay, go ahead and approach and make your address. Just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes to address the board. And if you need to skip ahead to the big questions that you want us thinking about, and then when we get to the part of the agenda where we will be discussing that, we can answer those questions.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening, board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm so excited that there appears to be a mental health awareness opportunity coming to the Vail district. My questions regarding it would be, how is it specifically different from existing resources already in the community being presented by healthcare agencies that have also acknowledged this issue? I was also wondering, this entity will be making referrals to healthcare establishments. Will they or Vail be monitoring things like the quality of the referral or the uniqueness of each individual like healthcare establishment? If you guys are familiar, I know healthcare establishments usually have an awareness of how personal a journey that can be, and oftentimes, you know, some may work over others. So that was just one question I had, since usually the mental health institution itself, entity, whichever it is on top of that. My other questions are like, what data are you hoping to collect about referrals, frequency of referrals? Will you store that? How will you store it? And whom will it be accessible by? I also had questions about the training requirements of, sorry, it's so nerve-wracking to speak up here. The training requirements by professionals that will be seeking referrals out. Will teachers be looking only for disruptive behavior, or will you guys have curriculum that teachers will need training on? And yes, to follow up, I guess, how what would be Vail's plan, I guess, publicity-wise, to kind of reconcile the idea that like a mental health journey, it can be deeply personal, deeply religious, and deeply different for every single individual. How will you reconcile those differences about what parents may believe with what you're proposing that they engage in? Thank you.
Thank you. We had a chance to write down some of those questions, and our presenters also had a chance to kind of hear, and hopefully we can cover everything. So we will go ahead and move forward on to the next part of the agenda, which is correspondence and reports. We'll go with the superintendent's report. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Tippett. No report this evening.
Okay, well, we'll skip right on to board reports. Any board members have a report? I know you guys do. Hold up, Mr. Buster.
Good evening, everyone. Had the opportunity, like other members of the board, to attend Finding Nemo Jr., and it really was a show worthy of Broadway. So hats off to all our students, educators, and parents that made that happen. They played an integral role in this outstanding production. Really hats off. Beyond that, I don't know if I had the opportunity to let everyone know, but I was voted into the Arizona School Board Association Black Alliance as the vice chair. I definitely look forward to representing Vail Unified School District, ASBA, as well as all students throughout the state, as well as I can. I also am part of the Executive Director Committee for Arizona School Board Association. And I want to let everybody know that the search is still ongoing, but we do anticipate selecting a new executive director by July of this year. Had the opportunity with another board member to attend the Pima County School Board / Superintendent Collaboration Meeting. And it's always good to meet and greet, network, and synergize with other school board members as well as superintendents. A lot of synergy, a lot of energy, a lot of sharing of resources. Last but certainly not least, last night, I had the opportunity to attend the Southeast Regional Council meeting. And with that, we had as our leader and guider through the process of community discussions and issues, the educator extraordinaire, Mr. Calvin Baker. And he is just exceptional always, and just has that ability to bring people together, bring out the best in people, the best ideas, so that we can move forward as a community. Just want to give him huge accolades. He uses his bonus days and he uses them well, and we are very appreciative to him as an entire community. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Buster. Are there any other board reports? Mrs. Anderson?
I too got to go see Finding Nemo Junior, and those fifth graders were so cute. And they did such a great job. It was fun to be there and support them and watch them. And how grateful I am to the staff who just gave them that opportunity. And Mr. Tate, I know you're a huge supporter of that, and so thank you. I also got to see Once Upon a Mattress, Cienega High School's annual musical. And just a shout out to both Cienega and Empire. Between the two schools, they have 5 kids that were nominated for the Monty Awards, which is the high school musical theater awards. I also got to attend Cienega's registration for their incoming freshmen, and just enjoyed that, seeing the kids, seeing all the things that they were looking at and the clubs, and then the excitement as they were choosing their classes. And another thing, not, I guess, something that I physically was there, but I just am so grateful for the CT program. And I was telling Mr. Schmidt that earlier. The acceptances just came out for the JTED program. So obviously there's ones that are done at the school and then through JTED themselves. And so just getting to see and hear kids that were being accepted through the school district and through the Pima County area just happened in the last week. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Pratt.
Thank you. It's almost like a broken record, but it really has to be stated multiple times. I went to Finding Nemo Junior as well, and I just want to recognize Ms. Ford and all those who helped her put this on. It was just an incredible evening, both for us to be able to watch, but also just seeing these kids have this experience was really incredible. So I just want to recognize her. I also, like Mr. Kruth, wanted to recognize our assistant principals. They do an incredible job making sure things are running smoothly at our schools and loving our kids, helping them be on track where they need to be. So I just want to say thank you to them. I also observed a student panel at Empire High School last Friday. They had a panel with the principals, and high school students had come up with questions to ask them, and they were so insightful and so good. I want to recognize Ms. Stow and her whole department in all of their work, putting that on. It was just incredible to see really just the maturity of these kids, but also giving the kids a platform to say, hey, first of all, we recognize you. We respect you enough to be listening to what you have to say, and that we're all in the room here listening. So I just loved to be able to witness that. So thank you to all who put that on. It also was fun to just hear some of the responses from the principals on culture on their campuses and things that they were doing on each of their campuses. And then I also just want to recognize Cottonwood. I think it's probably the first grade class. Just getting little little things like this, just little handwritten thank you notes and little cards. It really does mean a lot. So I just want to thank them.
Thank you. Mr. King.
All right, want to be the only one left out with saying that I didn't attend Finding Nemo Junior, so I was there as well. And it was great. It was, you know, seeing the work that Ms. Port and all of the kids and other community members put into putting on this presentation to also be able to perform in a very historic theater and see, you know, and now they're part of the legacy of people who've performed there. And if you ever get the opportunity to go backstage and go down to the basement, you can see some of the artists who have performed there. And there are a lot of very famous names that most people would recognize. I also attended a reality check lunch last week with Kevin Carney over at the Vail Innovation Center. And that was another great opportunity to get out and actually see what our people are doing and hear their stories, because it's not just, you know, from where we want to hear from them. We want to hear what their actual thoughts are. It's not, you know, we want to hear the good. We want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to hear about your kids. We want to hear about your dog. We want to hear about all of that stuff. And the reality check lunch makes all of that possible. And it was a really good experience to go over there and just hang out for a while and grab lunch. Also, April, I want to talk a little bit. April is kind of twofold. It is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and that's recognized with a purple ribbon. There's also another purple ribbon aspect of April as well. It's Month of the Military Child. So being a former military brat and understanding how public education and the information, really the tenacity it takes to be a child growing up in the military. You know, my public school education traveled, you know, through 10 different schools in several states and multiple countries. So, you know, it does take a lot to be that military child. And so it's just that time that we can actually take and recognize those kids that are out there that do go through these various adversity that they do face. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. I, like all of you, had the chance to attend Finding Nemo Junior at the Fox Theater. Mrs. Port just did an amazing job, and you could tell by the visual presentation and the skill of the kiddos how much time and effort was put into it by the kiddos, by teachers, and by parent volunteers and other teachers around supporting Mrs. Port. And I just am really grateful for our staff who intentionally pour into our students these extra and unique opportunities that will be formational moments, foundational moments as they grow into adults, and that they'll share with their kids. And I'm really grateful for that. I also had a chance to do a reality check, 2 reality check lunches with Mr. Krug, one at Corona Hills Middle School and one at Rincon Vista Middle School. Just had a wonderful discussion at both locations, just getting to know everybody in the room, everybody in the room getting to know each other better, even though that they work together. It's really important to take the time to have these intentional discussions and get to know you, so that when the time comes to ask a hard question, that there's a relationship there, and we can ask the hard question and know the relationship's going to be okay. It's really important. And I also appreciated going to the Pima County Collaborative Board Collaborative. It's really helpful to hear from different districts how different legislation is impacting them and their students based on the needs of their district. It gives you, it opens your eyes as a board member on how policy really impacts every child throughout the state. So those are great opportunities. And I think, I went to Once Upon a Mattress. It was fantastic, and saw several of those kiddos that got nominated for the Monty Awards. thank you to Jessica Armstead for another wonderful year with our kiddos at Andrada and
Empire
Mr.
Museum.
Vega for his work on that also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll go ahead and wrap up board reports, and now we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda, all items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There will be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Do any board members wish to remove a consent item? Okay, I'll go ahead and accept a motion then.
So moved.
Recommendation first.
Oh,
Recommended that the school district governing board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
thank you. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Mr. King moves.
I'll second.
And Mrs. Anderson seconds. I appreciate that. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Three. Next item on the agenda is old business. And we'll go with the construction update.
Thank you, President Tippett, members of the board. This is an item we put on the agenda a couple times a year. It's an inform item, so no motions on this one. We're good. But it's just an opportunity to take you virtually around the district on some construction projects that you may or may not be completely tuned into, and just share them with you and the board. So take it away, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Peru, President Tippett, members of the board. Want to take you through a handful of projects that we've been working on. And the first one, it's been well over a year that we've been working on. But we're very close to the end. Thank God. So the roofing project here, as you guys have lived through as well, some of the good and the bad times. Want to take you back to last July. This is what the roof looked like. We were about halfway-ish done. And you could see the old with the new there. And that's partially the old with the new. Because if you go back to this time, before we even started up there, you saw the mess that was up there. There was all kinds of different things going on. And this was a picture that I took just this morning to show you how much more organized and cleaner and just all around a much better product than we've ever had up there. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that we still don't have any leaks. Part of a roofing project, and Mr. Caruth is living it firsthand, and there's still a leak, and it's in his office. So we're still doing punch list items, and there's only one way to find out if the roof is good, and that's when water comes down on it. And we're still finding some of those seams that need to be welded a little bit better up on the roof, but it's a much better product than we've ever had before. And it also has new HVAC units up there to replace all the old ones that were not working so great. So, like I said, we're finishing up some punch list items, and then we should be done with the roof and have a nice 20-year warranty to go along with that roof. So, Copper Ridge, we were able to work with Solon, our solar provider, and do a superstructure out there over their basketball court. And that has been completed, and we are now pulling in solar energy and helping Copper Ridge out at the same time. So the kids love it. I was out there the other day, and they love playing basketball and hopscotch and foursquare and everything else that they're doing on that basketball court. Rincon Vista, we had those of you that have been to Rincon Vista, which I know all of you have, but if you've been there as a parent watching an athletic competition or what have you, just off the edge of that basketball court, it drops pretty quickly. We were starting to have some erosion issues underneath that basketball court. So we went ahead and did the repairs there. We also had some kiddos that it's a little more difficult to get down onto the field and participate with their friends if they're in a wheelchair or on crutches or things like that. So to take care of two issues at one time, we went ahead and put in a ramp for them to be able to get down there a little bit easier and keep staff from having to to potentially carry or help assist them to get up that slope that wasn't very kind. So beautiful addition, and will be great for the school for years to come. Fencing projects, I don't have any further pictures that I've showed you already, but we're down to our last two facilities, Pantano High School, and then a couple crash bars on gates over at Copper Ridge Elementary School. So we're very close to the end of that project as well. But that has been going on over a year. And then all of our schools will be to the standard, the district standard that we said that encapsulates our educational facilities, not necessarily playgrounds, but the facilities where the kids are learning is where they'll be behind the 8-foot wrought iron fences. Transportation yard, Jerry Brown's been doing an outstanding job in his vision for different things that we could do in that yard. And I just wanted to point out a couple of them. I'll give you a little history on this one. Way back when the bus barn was not paved, it was a gravel lot, and when we did pave it, there were several water lines that were pretty shallow, and when the paving happened, they removed the gravel lot and put the paving down. They didn't drop the water line, and this is a huge water line that goes through from the mechanic shop directly across the yard over to Old Dale Middle School. And throughout the last couple of years, our guys have had to go and repair that line because it was only about 6 inches deep underneath the asphalt. And, you know, buses rolling over that all the time, we get cracks in the line. And so our guys are constantly going back and repairing that. Well, we were able to go ahead and get this done correctly. And it's now a few feet under the surface versus a few inches. So we also were able to add some isolation valves so that we don't have to turn everybody off when there's an issue. We can turn off sections so that we can repair any water line issues. Another thing that a vision that Jerry Brown had was having a canopy over the fuel island, and that turned out really nice. And I know all the drivers are appreciative of that too. Desert Sky. So I saved this one for last. We had a pretty serious issue happen over there at the multi-purpose room. It's a masonry built building, but they have a stucco veneer on the outside of it. Well, that stucco veneer failed the other day and had popped off of the masonry. So we got a contractor out there right away to secure it, make sure that everybody was safe. And then I also at the same time secured emergency funding through the school facilities board so that district funds weren't used for this process to secure it and make sure that the building was okay. Now that's just, there you go. There's the example. You see it coming off of the wall. Another example, that's in between where the masonry block is and then where that stucco is popping off. There it is where it is falling below the window. Okay, and here it is now. So it's no longer there, but we've also made sure that we covered up between the current roof structure and the concrete block, just in case we have weather or anything like that, so it doesn't leak. So the next step in this process is working with the school facilities board to come up with the plan to redo that. Our proposal is to go back with what's called an EFIS system, which is kind of a synthetic stucco system that will have a longer longevity for the life of the building, and it's just a better material overall. Our most current schools have been using an EFIS system instead of stucco, and we've had a lot of luck with that. So that's my construction update.
Happy to answer any questions regarding anything Mr. Wood presented.
Any questions? Mrs. Anderson?
When we were at some of the schools, we saw there were some ties on some of the gates. Are those now on all of the schools?
Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Peruth, President Tippett, Ms. Anderson, members of the board. They will be. So the fencing contractor that was installing our fencing, doing our fencing project, they took it upon themselves. They did seek permission, but it's just another safety precaution on all of our gates. So now for the schools that didn't have a fencing project occurring, because they were already at our district standard, we're having our guys go back and they will be installing those same ties, if you will, around all the gates.
I call them ties. I'm not really sure if they are. Okay,
Good.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So you might have mentioned this and I might have missed it. What caused the stucco to pop from that?
Thank you, President President Tippett, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz, President Tippett, Mrs. Pratt, members of the board. I'm not 100% sure. I just know what they use to secure the veneer to the CMU block has failed. And I don't know what that system was. I can certainly check into that for you and let you know, but I really don't know what it was that created it to fall or come loose off of the CMU block.
We do know that Mr. Wood and his team know and have had into the school facilities board for weatherization to occur at Desert Sky Middle School, which would include not only painting, but the sealing to prevent leaks and from happening and seeping down behind things like the stucco. So one thing we're thinking is that I mean, that's been in process for how long?
About a year.
Yeah. And it was deemed a non-emergency. So it's put into a queue to get funded when the funding happens. We're thinking that perhaps there was some leakage between the stucco and the brick and the caused corrosion on the things that tied the stucco to the brick. So it's.
Do you feel like there's other sites that are also going to have, maybe potentially have this problem?
Mr. Wood.
Mr. Cruz, President Tippett, Mrs. Pratt. I don't, and the reason being is we don't have a lot of this veneer throughout our school facilities. Most of them you have either an EFIS system over your metal studs, or you have all masonry buildings, things like that. We don't have many more of the schools that I mean, there may be one or two, but the follow-up on Mr. Carruth's comment about the school facilities board, we had an assessment done on that facility along with 4 others. And that was the cracking of that stucco was pointed out in those assessments. So the school facilities board has been aware that the stucco cracking was mentioned on that assessment report. Now, did we feel that it was to the point where it was an emergency? Like you said, they did not deem it an emergency. It's an emergency now.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for securing that emergency funding.
Mr. King.
Mr. Wood, was there any additional structural damage outside of that? Was there any push in on the cinder block that backing that was there?
Mr. Wood.
President Tippett. Mr. King, we had a structural engineer also on site to determine what the best way was to secure the stucco that was coming down and to check the rest of the building. One being, if that stucco were to fall, while they were demoing it, would the roof system be able to hold it with that structure, or would the roof then be in jeopardy of falling in? And he certified all of it that it was safe for them to be up there working on it, bring it down, and if it were to fall, that our roof structure would be able to hold it. He also looked at the masonry, the roof, and all those things, and everything was as it should have been.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a question. The roofing project here at the district office was a fairly precarious project. How well did the contractor do at bidding the project? And did we stay in that? And then what's the upkeep over time to make sure that it lasts 20 years?
Thank you, President Tippett. I'll start the first piece just as a reminder that we had one bidder on this project because of the complexity of what the roof was. And he is somebody that we use a lot and probably better because he's a friendly contractor who knows that working with Mr. Wood and others would be an okay thing to do, but it was an incredibly challenging roof project. So with that, I'll turn the rest of it over to Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. President Tippett. Yes, Building Excellence was the only one that bid the project. They did an outstanding job. I don't think that I could have asked of more of them. Even when our roof was leaking and, when they're in between sections and as you guys lived through the various storms that were coming down on you, they were out here in a moment's notice. They were all in on it just as we would want them to be. I think they bid it correctly. I think that they've even haven't done change orders on things and just self-performed things to make it right. It was things that, when you guys saw what that roof looked like previously, and you never know in any construction project, as soon as you start tearing things off, there's going to be more issues that you find. And that's why there's contingency dollars built into those projects. But there were things that they just took care of. And I can't say that all contractors do that. We work with a number of really great contractors, and Building Excellence is right there at the top of the list with them. So I think that if you asked them today, they would say they learned a lot. And I don't know how many other roofs they want to bid on right away, but they would certainly do it again for us.
About the upkeep.
Oh, sorry. Yes, and the preventative maintenance. It's a TPO style roof, and at some point, if you all want to ever go up there and check it out, I'd happily take you up there. But it comes with that warranty. Even the factory that comes in and warranties their work has been here on numerous occasions to double check what was going on up there. We as a maintenance staff will continue, our AC guys are up there all the time. We will have maintenance staff that go up there and do preventative maintenance type things. Like we have trees all around our building. As those things drop leaves and branches and whatnot, they have to be cleaned up, and that's on the maintenance staff to continue to keep that.
Mr. Wood, what is the length of the warranty on the roof?
20 years.
Just to be specific.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you for the update. We'll go ahead and move on to new business consideration of approving funding resolution for the new Rocking Case School. This is an action item. Mr. Kruger.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. Mr. Wood and I are going to tag team this one. You all are well aware, we've communicated through various agenda items that we are in design and very shortly under construction for a new K-8 school in the Rocking K neighborhood. In fact, related to that, we closed on the land late last week, Friday. A few days before that, we sold and received the bond funds from the last bond sale. Just over $9 million of the remaining 2018 bond to cover a portion of that construction cost. So it's really an exciting time. The committee has been working, comprised of parents, staff, and community members almost a year now. Just in May, it will be a full year. So it'll be exciting to see what that process looks like as we break ground, hopefully on April 22nd. I'll also add Mrs. Robold is not able to be here tonight, but you can pencil in your calendars tentative groundbreaking ceremony for May 2nd. I believe that's a Thursday in the evening I believe at 5 o'clock, but we can get you those details. So all of those things are moving in motion. We are now at the point where we have Mr. Wood has been referencing the school facilities board, or the school facilities division as it's more formally known now, and our work with them. We are required to submit all of our construction documents and budget. They're actually embedded in our project as we move forward with this with one of their consultants. The state, which funds the School Facilities Board, has allocated a little over $19 million, actually $19,157,808 to our project. And that is all formula driven based on the number of square feet that we are using to build. A portion of those dollars are coming from a K-5 project and another from a 6-8 project, but that's the total amount that they will fund. And they are requiring assurance in form of a resolution that the school district will provide funding above that amount to complete the project. Just as a note, that our current estimates, and we're working with both our architects and contractors and getting those bids back from the subcontractors for the entire construction project, is a little over $33 million. In the background, we have it listed as $33,200,000. So to put that in perspective, the state is technically supposed to fund the entire project, but to build a school that would meet our criteria, and this is a very simple construction, as we've demonstrated, it's going to be a very nice building, but it's very simple construction, is about $14 million shy of, or in addition to what the state would fund. So fundamentally, we know that it requires an additional infusion of local dollars to build new schools. We've been doing that for a long time. It's why we set aside the $9 million from the bonds proceeds in the 2018 bond that we asked voters to approve. So this is what we're doing. The SFB is wanting us to bring to you for action how we're going to fund the remaining $43,192. And so that's laid out in our background is the following categories. Not to exceed that amount. We don't believe that the project will exceed that. It won't exceed that amount. It can't exceed that amount. But the remaining balance would be from these following local funds: $9,316,224 from the bond sale, not to exceed $500,000 in developer contributions or rooftop agreements, which we collect from various developers upon the sale of homes in their respective developments. $2.1 million in adjacent way funding, which are dollars that we collect from local property tax owners that can only be used for ingress and egress onto sites. And then another $2,126,986 from other district sources. And I just want to be clear about that. The majority of those will be coming from community programs to pay for a portion of the building that will be used eventually for preschool space, but in our process, it'll open as kindergarten space. But they're paying for that portion of the project. Food service. So we receive funds for capital items to improve our kitchens across our school district. So rather than use the dollars in the project, we're going to pull those dollars from that fund. Technology, we receive some funding from E-rate, which is federal funding. We can combine those dollars with some local dollars to help maximize the use of technology that we're putting in the building, and then some other dollars just for general that are be associated with general capital. Again, the bulk of those things are coming. The bulk of this is made up from adjacent ways and bond sales and developer contributions. So happy to answer any additional questions, or Mr. Wood, if I've missed anything in the general background, please fill it in, or other pieces you feel we need to make sure the board knows.
This is an action item.
Yep. Do you have anything else to add for the background, Mr. Wood?
Yeah, Mr. Fruth, President Tippett, members of the board. The reason why we're estimating a little bit is when a contractor tries to give us a guaranteed maximum price on a project like this, they need 100% design documents to be able to bid all those projects, all the subcontractors for the project, right? Currently, they've only been able to get through GMP #1. And then we're looking at 3 GMPs, guaranteed maximum prices on this project. So we know what the first GMP is come back as, and that's in your background as well. But we don't know what the next 2 are going to come back at because they don't have 100% drawings yet from the architect. So that's why we feel pretty strongly that it's not going to be above that 33,200,000, and we actually feel pretty confident it's going to be less than that, and we'll be able to give money back after the project is done. But we just don't know because subcontractors cannot bid their area specialty until they have 100% design documents to do it off of. So that's why we're estimating a little bit here.
This is a bit of a change from the SFB's practice. They've let us kind of do one GMP at a time, but now they're saying, okay, you need to give us a resolution that you're good for the estimate as it stands now. So we're laying these chunks of things out now and where we have local funds to pay for them if they're needed. So that's fundamentally where we are. We have contingency dollars built into the project as a requirement that are a part of that $33 million as well. So as Mr. Wood said, we're confident that it's not going to exceed that amount. And we'll probably not need all of those funds. And I would say probably the local district, the general capital funds would be the pot that we would put back first. Because those other ones are all pots that make good sense to be able to use for this as we move forward. So with that, now that you have a full, complete background in this, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve the resolution to commit an amount of district funding from the sources described in the background not to exceed $14,043,192 to be used to pay for the project budget and completion of the new Rocking K school as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Fruth. I'll accept a motion. Mrs. Pratt.
Seconded.
And Mr. Buster seconds. Any comments or questions? Mrs. Anderson?
I just think my only statement is just that we've studied this, right? So this isn't new. So just thank you so much for all you do. It's a lot of work.
I just have a little bit of a snarky comment. I'd like a guarantee from the state legislature that local taxpayers don't have to build schools. It's a state responsibility. I'd like that guarantee. Could they pass that one?
Can we vote on that?
Probably not this year. Yes. Much more convenient to have the local taxpayer finish it off. With that said, I'll go ahead and call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is FY25 budget projections and compensation considerations. This is a study item, Mr. Fruth.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. We've spent significant time in several study sessions reviewing both the current FY25 or 24 budget and also projections for the upcoming FY25 budget. We're at a place now where we're needing to narrow down our consideration of the FY25 budget so that we can begin speaking about do we have an ability to do any kind of cost of living increases or other adjustments as necessary. So want to present to you tonight just a rough overview of this process, and then we'll continue to refine this over the next couple of meetings into an action item. But we have reviewed our projected revenue for our budget, in particular in regard to our maintenance and operation budget. for this year. That revenue projection is based on an estimation of what our student count is, and then how that student count. So if you think of students as every kid brings their nose in their little backpack, and they're one kid, but then that is translated into each kid also brings an average daily membership, which is a weighted count depending upon how old they are, what additional services they may need, those kinds of things. So that's called ADM. So it's a combination of the actual number of students and the actual amount of ADM that they generate. That formula drives our revenue for the school district. The other considerations primarily are around what additional revenue may or may not be coming from the state level. That is still not yet fully decided at the legislative level. The legislature has not passed a budget and the governor has not signed a budget yet, but it is in statute that the legislature must fund an inflationary increase on the base support level for each individual student at the inflationary amount up to 2%. And so since inflation is running above 2%, we're very comfortable that that increase will come. So really fundamentally, that's where the additional revenue that we would see is coming from. So a growth, we're expecting a growth of a roughly somewhere between 90 and 100 new students for next year, and an additional revenue of 2% on the base support level. That total general budget limit comes up to a maintenance and operation limit for us, so we can spend up to this amount of $134,600,000. So that would comprise the overall budget picture for us. Our staff have been diligently working then on what additional expenses we have to operate next year. In particular, Mrs. Kudos, Mrs. Dabney, Mrs. Wood have gone site by site and department by department, and sat down saying, here's your projections at your site for the number of students that you have. We have our own formula for how we allocate the number of teaching positions, the number of support staff positions, and those things based on the number of students that we are estimating at each respective school site. And then what their needs are above that. So that process, and some sites frankly are reducing in staff and some sites are increasing in staff based on what their enrollment looks like. But the sum total of that for us is an increase of about just under $1.3 million in new positions, of which we have, I should have mentioned this, the $134 million M&O budget gives us a budget limit beyond that we can spend up to of about just under $13 million. So that 134 million, we have about just 12 million, just under $900,000 of space that we can spend into for next year. So about where we are in this process, about $1.3 million in new positions, a little over $1 million. The board is already dedicated towards the increase in health care benefits. We've done that at the last board meeting. Or just a reminder, our health benefits have gone up, or the medical benefits have gone up 10.75%. So it's covering the portions of that we have covered previously, which allows, just covering this ground again, allows for an employee to receive a PPO plan at no cost to them. And then there's a tiered amount for employee plus spouse, employee plus family, and so on. So those are funded at that at those historic proportions. But the cost to us is a little over $1 million. The other big kind of thing we need to set into the budget is a healthy budget reserve moving forward, so that we know that if something happens, we've got a reasonable reserve in place. And Mrs. Kudos is recommending a $3 million reserve at this point for us to be able to do that. There's a couple of other minor things like expected cost of utility increases, some things like that, but that leaves us a balance of, so what can we reasonably bring to you as a recommendation for a cost of living increase for staff? We're considering something in the neighborhood of a 3% cost of living increase to staff, which would have an impact, an expense impact of just under $2.9 million that would be needed to provide that increase across all categories of employees. So when we total our expected revenue with our expected expenses, including a budget reserve, we're left, if there is a 3% salary increase, we're very efficient, right down to about $18,000 remaining above where we are. Now, I should say, and Mrs. Quiros is here, she would not be comfortable with that amount if she actually knew that that's the amount that we're going to have moving into next year. We expect, as we close out this FY24, there will be additional funds that will be captured back due to vacancy savings, other unspent budget capacity at the sites, probably in at least equal amount to the expected budget reserve. So we're comfortable moving forward with some recommendation around a 3% recommendation for a cost of living increase. In addition, and I just want to bring this forward, we have two pots of money that are one-time funding. Both of them have occurred from kind of unusual circumstances. I just want to describe one-time funding as just that. We get it once, we spend it, it's gone. So one-time funding is really difficult to put into any kind of a budget that would have a reoccurring, require a reoccurring allocation on an annual basis. So positions, subscriptions, anything like that. So the task for us is, how do we use those dollars in a way that leverage effective change and meaningful change? So we have two pots of those funds. Some are coming from two budget cycles ago from Proposition 301. Just as a reminder, Prop 301 are sales tax revenue that are collected that are collected and can only be spent for the state's definition of teacher, of what a teacher is, which is a pretty narrow definition. So the one-time funding came because the legislature cut those Prop 301, they cut the allocations to schools during the Great Recession, and they never made those up. Two budget cycles ago, they made district whole on that proportion. And we have a one-time funding allocation related to that. The other funding for us is one-time funding that is M&O funding that came out of this last year's budget, state budget, as part of the state budget negotiation. $3 billion worth. An additional one-time funding was provided to all schools and charters, of which our portion of that in Vail is just slightly over $3.9 million. So one of the reasons we didn't use 301 funds last year is we would have given, in essence, a small group of employees one-time funding, and then all other employees wouldn't have had the opportunity to receive any additional funding. Now that we can match some of that with this other one-time funding that we received this year, it's our recommendation to use a portion of that funding somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2% to a 2.5% amount that would be paid to employees in a two-payment retention payment sometime in the fall after return from the school, year, in combination. That would leave us, depending upon which route we choose, the board ultimately decides to choose a balance in that M&O funding of somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.7 to 2.4 million of M&O funding left So the idea, the thought there is to use some of those dollars for capital projects that we can use both at site level discretion and then also Mr. Wood just been, it's just described the number of projects that we have that we could use those funds for. So just as a quick summary, those are the things that we're looking at. And again, this is just a verbal run through of things that we have been discussing in study sessions. We will bring back as a more formal package at the next board meeting, but curious about your input on this process in general. We have just to run through our budget limit on the M&O side for next year will be about $134 million, of which we have about $12.9 million of budget capacity, including those pieces that I described, budget reserve, district benefits, new positions, and then an amount for cost of living increase somewhere in the neighborhood of a 3% increase, depending upon if there's any additional positions that come up between now and the next board meeting. We think we're pretty comfortable with that. We may need to back off that just a little bit, but that's kind of right where we're at in regard to that piece. And then using one-time funding that's available to us to do a retention payment to staff, likely over 2 payments in the neighborhood of either 2% or 2.5%, depending upon kind of where we are with other budgets, and then using the remaining balance of that one-time M&O funding for capital projects. So that's what I have as far as a background to run through. It's a quick summary of what we were discussing earlier in our study session. I'm happy to answer any questions or receive your feedback.
Thank you. This is a study item. Is there any comments or questions? Mrs. Pratt?
I'll just make a comment that we studied this at the study session. I just want to say thank you for all the time that you took to explain everything to us and present it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I just wanted to kind of have a chance to say kind of my thoughts. So we got wrapped up pretty quickly there. I'm really comfortable with the 3%. And then as far as the retention bonus, I'd love to be able to do 2.5, but if like there's a long list of capital needs, because I know we were starved of capital dollars for quite some time. I understand the need to roll that back so that we can do some of those projects, so we don't have walls falling off of block walls, for example. Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing. So the study item, sole source care solace. This is an action item. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. I'm going to wade into this, and I will have my backup phone a friend, Miss Jill Wells, here as well to help me walk through this if needed. So, Mrs. Wells, please be prepared if I wander into the weeds on something related to this. And I did write down questions that were asked as part of the call to the public too, so I'll try and remember to hit those as part of my comments. So we have made it a point both of now we're just coming off the budget conversation, the previous item. Since we received federal funding and since COVID, we've really made it a point to lean into expansion of supports for students in regard to mental health. And in fact, we have expanded our services after this year. It'll be over $800,000 of ongoing supports that we wouldn't have had in place prior to the pandemic. And that's so, and that's through positions, one such as Mrs. Wells' position, a lead counselor position, counseling positions at schools. We've also been very aggressive about pursuing grant funding through the state to expand, double the number of counselors that we have in our schools. But here's one really critical component. It is imperative that schools focus on character education skills, skill building when it comes to this, and frankly, fundamental education. Those pieces, the most robust thing that we know that we can do as an education system for mental health of children is provide them with a really rich and effective general education program. Research is very clear on that. That's our main lane. What we can't provide and shouldn't provide is therapy within schools. That's outside of our lane. But we partner, we know when we work with families and children that there's often a need for referral out to outside counseling and therapy services. Currently, Ms. Wells is one person, as well as our counselors on our schools. When we say, hey, here's a list of providers that you can try and go find, it's a little bit like assigning us to go set up our cable bill or us to go provide auto insurance. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of time on the phone to churn through provider after provider, find somebody that works. What does that look like? What does that handoff look like? It's more of a referral, and here's a list, and you hope that there's a connection with a provider that fits your family. What Care Solace is doing, and they're a fairly new company. They're also working with a couple of local school districts that we have thoroughly vetted their services. Is they really sit in between as a concierge service. So we pay. If we enter into this agreement, we would pay them a base amount, and then the service would be free to all parents and guardians for themselves and or their children, as well as staff and their families, to say, hey, rather than handing you a list of, hey, here's some providers you might want to just try and call and see if they're effective, you can contact a Care Solace representative who will interview you and go through the process. So it's completely, first of all, most importantly, it's completely voluntary. This is not something that's a required thing. And the only way that somebody can access that is for you as a parent or you as an employee to access that service individually. So there is no other information that's exchanged from the district to Care Solace other than here's the referral to go do that. And information about that particular service. So once they're connected with the Care Solace representative, they go through an interview process to find those. What are you looking for in a provider? What are the unique things that you have that you want for your family? And then, so they go through that interview process, and then they're the ones that are on the phone combing through the various list of local providers to say who has access, here's availability, here's people that if you call them, they've already said that they have availability and they can take you and your family or you and your service. So that's fundamentally how that works. And as far as quality goes of that provider, it's no different than if I were to make an arrangement that I can vet them. I can still vet them. If I get the list, I can still vet who they are. I can choose who's on that list. I don't have to take who's on that list, but I know that if I call them, they've got space for me and or my family if I need them. It's still up to me as an individual to determine if that's a good fit. If it's not a good fit, you simply do that process again with Care Solace and say that's not a good fit. You just go through. What you're not doing is sitting on the phone trying to find multiple providers at a time. So in essence, Care Solace, I think they would monitor generally, hey, is this a good provider or not, based on feedback they're getting from the community, but we wouldn't do that. That's still between the guardian, parent, and that provider. How is it specifically different than other services? It is not a service provider itself. It's really a concierge service. They work with providers who have access. They work the phones in the area to see which providers have access, and based on your interests and your family's need, then they provide that list of people to you to seek. the school district won't store any referrals. It's simply, hey, this is a service. Cure Solace will probably say, we'll keep information if you exchange that information with them on what are you looking for, so that when you come back to them, I'm certain that if we asked how many people have used the service for us, they would give us a number, but they'd be prevented from giving us any personal information about what that would look like. It would simply be a number. There's no curriculum because it's just a connection with a provider. And then our plan, if we move forward, is to make people, both beginning with staff, aware that we're doing this, and then do more of an awareness campaign this summer and fall as school rolls out for parents. I think I hit everything. Mrs. Wells, did I miss anything of?
No, that's quite all right. That answers quite a few questions. You said it's coming later, so I'm sure more questions will come.
Yeah. Thank you. Mrs. Wells, is there any other background? Did I miss? Okay, thank you. So I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board determines that the vendor Cure Solace as the sole provider for mental health referral services for the school district as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Crude. I'll accept a motion.
A motion.
Mrs. Anderson
I'll
moves.
second.
And Mrs. Pratt seconds. Any comments or questions? Mrs. Pratt?
I just want to say thank you to Ms. Wells and all those who worked on this. What an incredible resource for people who are likely stretched thin or feeling like the water is just right to their nose and they don't have the capacity at that point to be making dozens and dozens of phone calls, which is what is required right now to find providers who have availability or maybe accept your insurance or whatever it might be. So I just am so excited about this resource for our community. So thank you for all your work on that.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. King?
Ms. Wells, thank you for putting all this together. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what Ms. Pratt said as well, and seeing how this could actually be part of more of the benefits package. This actually could help in recruiting and retention of employment candidates as well, and in addition to bringing potential students to the district. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Mrs. Anderson?
This is something that I've watched in my own home. And I've seen the change within our district too, as I've had kids who we didn't know and kind of did it on our own and not knowing who to go to a change even with my younger kids once COVID hit. And I felt like there was a change. Teachers reaching out and just seeing things that I wasn't even seeing. I think the hardest part for parents or individuals, right, even when they're struggling with it, is getting these services. And we'll call and they're not taking new patients, or there's a 6-month waiting list and you're usually in emergency mode. And so I'm just so grateful that this is going to be an opportunity for our families, whether that is staff, student, whatever it may be. And I just want to say thanks. Like I feel like, what else can we do? And I see the good and the things that staff are doing, and I have seen them go above and beyond. And in my home, they have saved lives. But the frustration as a parent to know what to do, I'm just so grateful that this will give an opportunity. My only question is how do we get this out? Like what does publicity look like for this? Because I know obviously many times when people are going through things that it might not be in the forefront that they know it. And so I guess just how is this going to be promoted is, I think, my biggest thing. And I hope that we're loud, really, really loud about it.
Thank you, President Tippett, Board Member Anderson. I'll take a first stab at that, and then Mrs. Wells, I know it was on a phone call, a Zoom call about that. One of the things we're really, Solis is really passionate about is how do we get this information out and who. So we're needing to build capacity with our staff first, with understanding what that looks like. So that would be the first thing that we'll be doing, is getting information to all staff, probably in tiers first, counselors and those that work in this realm, then teachers and other staff, and information about that, what that looks like, what we're doing and why. And then really beginning the campaign more with parents on the back to school side of things. Here's another resource. Here's what that looks like. We know, and I've heard you communicate to me, it's not just kids that we think are on a radar who are struggling with this, or families. It is actually lots of families who are struggling with this. And how do I know, and where do I go, and where do I turn? And so we want to be able to get that information to all families, and not just those that maybe are on our radar within the school system. So I think it's really going to be a layered approach. One of the reasons we're pushing on this now is we have some runway between now and the end of the school year to do that work with our staff, and then get those bugs worked out and do more of a campaign on a back to school basis when we come back in July. Mrs. Wells, is there any other details you want to add in regard to that?
Covered. I mean, we have a training scheduled within the next 2 weeks to get all of the core staff trained.
And who comprises the core staff?
So principals, assistant principals, counselors, SSCs, possibly behavior specialists, and school sites. So that is like our top tier of everyone currently giving referrals. I called principals on Friday and today and talked to them about who they would like on their staff training. So if I'm missing someone, like maybe an SAT, like on a high school staff looks different than an elementary staff. So it will be up to the principals to send who they would like to be trained. But we're doing our best to roll that training, because it is the end of the year, to roll that training into existing meetings. So we've got a leadership meeting next week, and then we have a counseling meeting next week. So a lot of that staff will already be there for those in-person trainings, and then other trainings will be offered soon, so we don't have to pull that stuff off.
And I was able to participate in a portion of the meeting where we're talking about the communication, and the company has templated letters to staff, templated letters to parents, templated letters to the community, say, hey, here's what this is. And they're like, use this language. If it works for you, you can adjust it and change it however you want. We just want to give you a toolkit to begin to be able to communicate this out to folks. And again, I just want to say that this is the connection point is for the service is still traditional. In other words, it is you as the parent or you as the staff member making your own personal connection with the provider. What the Solis does is connect you with people who have availability. They take all insurance. They work with, so whatever your insurance is, or if you have no insurance, they'll work with you to help sort and sift to that group so that you're not calling somebody that doesn't take your thing, whatever that thing is. The other thing I just want to mention, the cost of this, the budget impact is about $62,000 a year. Roughly, that's a little, plus or minus what we pay for a counseling position. I know this because I know some of the work that Mrs. Wells does. She spends an inordinate amount of time on the phone trying to work with providers herself with families that are in crisis to get them connected. And it's a boatload of work. So what we're trying to do is, in essence, take that burden. One, I'm not sure that that's the best role for our staff to be in anyways. Our staff should be working in supporting kids and navigating their environment while they're with us. This really unburdens us from that and says, here's a place that you can go when you want to access those things. Because that's a relationship that you should have as a family or as a parent with whoever that provider is. It's just narrowing that down.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So just to be clear, there is an actual, like a referral that will need to happen from Vale's school district to the person. It's not me as a parent. I saw this advertisement. I can pick up the phone and call.
We can send it out a form and say, here, we contract with Care Solace. They just need to verify that you are a parent of the Vale School District, an employee of the Vale School District, a family member of an employee of the Vale School District, or a family member of the parent, and they say, thank you, and then you're off for the races.
It's easier than that. It's Care Solace, / Vale School District. Run. You can, yeah, they're very lenient with, following through on that.
The payment to them, the funding model for them is the annual payment. They're paying their staff to do that. And then when they come into a region and they're here, and they're currently working with the Tanque Verde School District. I think that's the only school district in Pima County that I'm aware of. They're also working with some school districts in Phoenix. So when they come into a new region, they start collecting those providers that they already know because of the provider networks, who's there, what's available, but they start collecting more and more information, and then they know who those providers are. So they're leveraging the efficiency of working in bulk with lots of providers on who has time and who has space. So for them, the fee, the referral fee, they're getting that from us in the cost of this contract, the annual contract.
Just having been on school sites, I've seen parents in situations who were just far too overwhelmed to undertake this process. And watching the school site struggle to wrap around the kiddo as much as they can with the limited resources that are available for mental health on school campuses, just because education is what happens at school. I think that this will be really helpful to many people, and I'm grateful for the easy access to it, and also grateful for the privacy that's associated with it, that we're not involved in that piece. So this is an action item, and we've already made the motion. If there are no comments or questions, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Last item on the agenda is adjournment. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Mr. King moves,
Second.
and Mrs. Pratt seconds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, motion carries.